Welcome to TezTalks Radio. I'm your host, Marissa True, and on this show, we bring together the people within our Tezos community and the Web3 space that are making an impact. Today, I'm joined by LM, a hybrid artist using healing intentions, tech, and Web3 to create immersive experiences. So welcome. How are you?
Hello, you beautiful souls. Thank you so much, Marissa. I'm so excited to be here. Doing well. How are you?
I am grand, thank you. I'm actually very curious to get into this conversation. So I do want to bring us right to the very beginning where I'd love to ask, what your artistic journey has been. What were you doing before you entered into the world of crypto and digitally immersive art?
Definitely. So I've been an artist my whole life. I've been in the performing arts since I was 4 years old. I was dancing, and my mother and her friends have always been artists. I'm from the DMV area, so I grew up that Smithsonian kid. I was on going to the National Mall, going to the different museums, falling in love with the history of art and just art in general and why it felt so good to view art and things of that nature. And I knew early on that it was such a healing way for me. And I wanted to have that be what I gave to other people. I wanted to express myself through my artistic expression, not just in my performing art side, but in the digital space and things of that nature. So growing up, I was the kid who, when we went to the Disney store, everyone was running around looking at the different things they wanted to get. I was inside the log doing the colorful, playing all the games, like, how do I make this? My mom's like, the computer app or the game? I'm like, all of that. I want to do all of this. So that fast forward to when I came into it was around the time of COVID and things of that nature. I was working from home. My children, bless their hearts. At the time, my children are now 4 and 14, but at the time it was a little bit younger. And mommy needed a way out of the house without being out of the house and things of that nature. So I had turned to the creative Adobe suites and things of that nature, going through the tutorials, learning, sharpening my skills because Adobe caught me early on and I'm an Adobe girl. So I was like, where else can I go? And my best friend's husband at the time was like, yeah, so why don't you just turn these into NFTs? And walked out the conversation. I was like, what does that even mean? What did you said 3 letters to me? I'm not sure what that means. I'm an inquisitive soul. So I was like, I'm going to go figure out what this means. So I was like, Googling what is an NFT. And it led me to Twitter. And I was like, okay, haven't used my Twitter since my college days in 2009. I'm aging myself, but woo woo. And I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. So then I hopped into a Twitter space and it was a wrap. I was like, what have I discovered? Who are these people? What is happening? So early on, I started out venturing through different places like the Pep Cafe, and that's always going to be a home base. And guided through them, I found Tezos and the burritos and Pep Cafe. A lot of the different artists and people there all were Tezos artists. And I was like, what is this? Because I had gotten a foundation invite. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I found out about gas and I was like, okay. we'll put this in a bubble and table that for a moment. And then I found Tezos and I was like, wait, I can be an artist on Tezos. I can be a collector on Tezos. I can just love the art of loving and I can discover people new every day and transcend space and time because globally I had now been introduced to more people than I've ever encountered before because of Tesla. And I was like, this is where it's at. Like, why else go anywhere? Like, I will always be a person who's like, yes, you should dibble and dabble everywhere. But Tesla's always, it's just so homey. It was one of those, oh yeah, these people get it. Okay, these are my people. So that's how I led down and started in Tezos.
Right. So I guess Tezos for you represented like a very welcoming and diverse community, and there was so much rich art that existed on there. with,
Yeah.
like you said, a low barrier to entry. So I think it's like a wonderful access point for people who, I think we've all been guilty of Googling the words NFT at some point in our lives. I mean, that's how we all began our learning journey with all of this. But I think what's particularly interesting is that, when you were a child, you were very much surrounded by traditional art. If you were going to the galleries and the museums. So what was it that really hooked you into digital art itself? Like, do you remember a moment where digital art really struck you and you thought, if I'm going to be an artist in any kind of way, I'd like it to be here?
Yes, definitely, 100%. So when I was going to school, I was doing a lot of different technology-based things also with art and things of that nature. So I was in the gifted and talented, I did IB classes and things of that nature. Definitely a STEM one, always like me and my daughter were STEM. My mom was a STEM, it's one of those things.
Mhm.
So I came into when it was college time, and you're like, okay, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And the options were the art route, where they would take your work, and it was VCU, so Virginia Commonwealth University, very prestigious art program, and they would say, okay, we're going to assess your work, and then after a year, we'll let you know. I was like, I have school to get through and things to do. We are not trying to, to extend this out. So, what other routes pair almost identically with the art route, but without having to go through that rigorous program? Because I was like, that's stressful. Like right out the gate,
Mhm.
that's a lot of stress. And it led me down mass communications, creative advertising. So I was like, oh, I get to do the graphic design, I get the tech side, and I get this way faster. And we get a little sprinkling of all of it versus being concentrated in a specific route like sculptures or painting or this. I was like, I don't know which. I was like, I've been around art my whole life. I've never picked a medium. I'm not that person. I want to be able to do whatever I'm called to do and the expressions I want to express them however it comes out of me. I don't want to be tied to a specific. So going to college led me down the picking which route. So I became a graphic designer, and right out of college, I started working for a company doing graphic design work, and then stayed there, and they kept saying, You're too talented to be here." And I'm like, "You can't say that. That's not allowed to be said." So, long story short, I kept denying that I was not supposed to be in corporate. And
Mhm.
I was like, no, 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 this is where I'm supposed to be. It's stable, it's sturdy, it gives me what I need. That's what it, no, no, life is going to put you where you need to be. And you can fight it, but then it just goes around and circumvents, and it took you longer to get to where you were going to be anyway. So I contracted Lyme disease while I was in corporate, and then I couldn't function in the same ways that I was able to function before. So for me, my environment became my biggest hazard. So I couldn't do the driving to work. So I had to work remotely. And from there, it turned into okay, they were working with me, they loved it. I got a severance. I started my own business. I was like, I'll be a freelance graphic designer. I have all the skills, I have all the knowledge. I will learn anything and everything I want to, I'm able to. And that's just always been my mindset, especially when it's come to art and tech. And so then I was like, okay, we're going to do a thing. So fast forward to really understanding that I come from a place of, yes, I have chronic pain, I have chronic illnesses, I have scoliosis, I have Lyme, and I have turned to homeopathic means. I make my own jewelries, I make my own essential oil mixture, paints, and things of that nature. I do my baths when I'm making them, and I really charge all of the art that I do. So it all starts in
Mhm.
physical form, and
Right.
from there I go and then it becomes digital because I take the canvas works that I do, and you can see them all piled in the background, like lots of canvases. But I take photographs of each section of it, make them into patterns, and then that becomes energized through what I now love, which is the XR and 3D and metaverse building and everything that I've become into. But
Mhm.
it all started from I have healing ways and I wanted to share them. And for me, it was just natural to do it this way, and it's such a
Yeah.
joy. So many people are accepting of it and in tune with it. So I brought my sound bath mixed with animation into Tezos by delivering them as NFTs and objects, but built out with each of those inside of a metaverse so you can come
Mhm.
and meditate and then bring that into AR where you are. Like it's a whole thing.
Right, so it sounds like I think we're all guilty of this when we're young and we're just coming out of college. It's basically how do we marry something we are passionate about with something that'll pay our bills, which is why we always end up typically kind of hopping onto the hamster wheel or joining the rat race and kind of seeing how far it can take us. And I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that you contracted Lyme disease. I have a few friends that suffer from it, and it's not by any means a light and casual condition. It's very destructive and very intrusive into your lifestyle. So I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. But like you said, it sounds like you harnessed the new opportunity it sort of presented, or like turned it into a silver lining for yourself and saying that I'm going to change my lifestyle and adapt to doing something that's a bit more aligned with my passions without this pressure to, you know, focus on the income and the corporate ladder and the promotion schedule,
And
which
then
I
it's
think,
easy, but definitely that part, like, we
yeah,
stress and stress kills. So I'm like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Like, let's rewrite everything that we were told because again, I was told, okay, well, you cannot be with Lyme disease and not on the antibiotics for the rest of your life. I was allergic to the antibiotics because my body is allergic to it's like, we just good luck. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
there's a way around it, but it took self-discovery and breaking the molds that you're like, I have to do a traditional thing. My dad
right.
worked at the patent office for 40 plus years. Like all I knew was you do a job and that, gives
Mm,
this stability. And I'm like, being an artist is the least stable. Like, what? What is stable? Like,
yeah.
what do you
Yeah,
so
I think it's the idea of if you want to free yourself from the shackles of like social pressure, you become an artist because artists are probably the most autonomous figures that we have in culture. And I think what's also interesting is that when you enter a technical or technological art community like Tezos, you kind of exist in this intersection between all of this fast moving tech that's promising to revolutionize the way we live, work, and play by tomorrow, but also you're using it in a way that I think most wouldn't occur to most, like the way that blockchain has really created this environment for a creator space is an application I don't think many were prepared to come across or were prepared to embrace at the very beginning, because it was all about finance and all about making money and turning a profit. So that's where I find your work so interesting because, as you mentioned before, you use a lot of holistic practices, homeopathic practices, and healing as a central tenet of your work. So, when it comes to the tech space, how do you inject that, I guess, healing energy into your digital works?
so many ways. So it is so much fun to see how far I can push an immersive experience for someone. So that's where I come from. I'm like, what do I want them to take away from this experience? So one of my absolute favorite collections is on objects, and it's the Infinite Breath collection. And it's a series of the seven main chakras, and there's an animation that is built out with the 478 breathing technique. So I wanted to bring a way for people to have a moment like if you're stressed and you just need to take a breath, because our breath is so important and people don't necessarily pay attention to their breath. So I'm like, if you can learn a technique and
Mhm.
you can learn it to a visual and you can tie it to a frequency that will help you just find the balance that you are specifically needing, that's powerful. And then leading with, adding it with the layer of smart contracts and just the blockchain, I was like, how can I not leap and see where this goes? And so I definitely enjoyed making the animations because I used all of the things, After Effects and Photoshop, and I took literal pieces of the canvas and put them into the spheres and all of the things, and then creating the assets because I was like, okay, I was living in After Effects, but I was like, let me push this. How do I push this? So I learned Blender, And that's when I came into learning Blender. So making the assets in there, and then when I discovered later on all of the things that I'm doing as far as this side of the art and this side of adding my sound bowl meditation to it, because I used to do TikTok lives and do sound bathing with people, but
Mhm.
it's a lot of energy to get back. So I was like, how do I do it in a way that won't drain me, but I can still reach more people than what I was able to take in
Mhm.
through the art? And they can take the art in anywhere they are and experience it. So it started off in just a audio and visual, and then I built out with those assets that I started out with as I progressed in my learning, a metaverse inside of Spatial IO where I
Mhm.
love to be, because I am a spatial guide, but also just because I love the accessibility. Anything that can be bought by web, by application on your mobile phone, and by VR headset is a winner for me. So I love creating there, and I created the with those assets individual worlds and individual rooms where you can meditate yourself, or you can come down into the main area and meditate, and it has the breathing technique so you can follow that and just de-stress. And then if you throw it into the AR mode, it's fabulous. And it's also built out in over the reality. So you can also
Mhm.
experience it geotagged. So it's all the bringing the healing to where the people are. That's my
Right.
goal. So
So it So essentially, by putting it into a digital space, you not only sort of gave yourself the relief of not having to expend energy every single time you wanted to conduct any kind of healing practice, but also bring it to a space where you knew it could almost take a life of its own and reach more and more people. And I think, when we speak of technology, as I was mentioning earlier, we often when we think of healing and rest, we think of actually pulling ourselves away from technology. Rather, what you're doing is creating a sanctuary within it. But I wanted to ask if, during your time dabbling into the crypto and Web3 space, do you feel that this is a space that needs more healing than
oh,
others? Like,
oh
what
yes.
are the main things you come across that make you think this is a space that would really benefit from my help?
It's so fast paced. The fast pace of it all. So I'm one of those people. Time is hard for me. I'm like, time is a construct that, and I'm trying to get jiggy with it. But it's in Web3, it's like, okay, wait a minute now, wait a minute. Literally day to day, anything that was before could be no more. Like, it's one of those, and with that comes a heightened sense of, wait a minute, okay, wait, okay, I need to be aware of everything that's going on, and you get thrown out of balance very easily inside of the Web3 space. I've been guilty of it. I'm still trying to find my balance. And so I'll scream it from the rooftop top. Drink your moon water, your regular water, whatever water, you hydrate, step away. And I say it so loudly because I know for myself, you can get sucked in so deeply to it. So the fast pace of it all, and also the high risk, high reward things that other sectors of the crypto go through causes
Mhm.
and trickles throughout every area. And also the this is a great space for art, and also people are very critical of art. So
Mhm.
it you bump into all of the different things compounding one another. So healing is definitely something that is, I'm like, yeah, Web3 needs a lot of healing. They need spaces where you can come and just okay, I found my breath. Okay, back to where I was going, what I'm learning, what is new now, with how fast AI is evolving. Yes, it's evolving at a super fast rate. So are we. So it's like all of the things combined, sometimes we just need to step away, take a
Mhm.
breath. Like the Midi Punks family says, get off your and touch some grass. you know. So yes, we do the things.
So, I mean, I think a lot of the fast-paced environment, or like those characteristics of, this blockchain world that we all seem to be dabbling in, is always underpinned by the fact that there's this pressure to financialize pretty much everything that we do on chain, whether it's, making sure that artists get royalties, which they absolutely should, and, have better means of selling and collecting work in support of other artists. It's all great and good, but again, there's this there's this fixation on, the dollar return or the profit, or have I lost money on a particular transaction, which I think makes stress inherent in the space.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask if you have had any encounters where you kind of truly felt the impact of your work on whether it was a community or an individual, and in that same breath, whether there was someone else's work that carried that impact for you.
Oh, most certainly. I have found so much healing in I collect art that I love. Like, it doesn't matter like what it is. If I'm drawn to it, I'm like, okay, let me find a way to get that. And so I have found so many different healing NFTs out there. It's been crazy, especially on the Tezos blockchain and different forms. I know that the poetry, oh my goodness, the music, the way that people are like, let me lean into my superpower and here, let me show you. And I'm gonna add a visual to it because everyone feels as if they need to add visuals to it. But on the strength of what they're giving, it's such gifts out there. And I'm like, you have treasures left, right, and center. And I'm like, you don't even know that you're a treasure. Oh, I do. Collect, 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 collect. And so definitely finding the spaces in between the stressful spaces, in between the rush of it all was the greatest thing that I could find. I have found such strength in the communities. There are people who are transitional through all the spaces, and those people, I'm like, yes, I gravitate to. I'm definitely reflective. So I find that you can't stay stagnant in Web3. It's not something that, if you do, I don't know how you do it, but I would suggest not staying stagnant. But there will always be your tribe people. There will always be those
Mhm.
people that help say, okay, have you had your rest? Oh, you've done 24-hour space? Get off. Like, take care of yourself, do the
Yeah.
things. And they're growing bigger and bigger in between the other spaces. So people are going to come to know and not fear NFTs as all the negative and the naysay about it, but they will be like, oh, well, that's one aspect of such a bigger thing. And that's what I'm really in tune to.
So where are these safe havens for you within the Tezos community? Like, where do you seek your tribe in this space? Because I think a lot of people underestimate just how vast the creative ecosystem on Tezos is. And within that, there are so many other pockets that you can, affiliate yourself with or get to know. So who are yours?
Definitely. Okay, so I have a whole mixture. I am in love with the Pep Cafe people. So the Strokes and the Bogas of the world, they're amazing. And definitely the Burrito Crew. So I love Tan Tan and Flynn and all of these. There's so many different pockets. You are correct. And this in general, the Tezos Commons, amazing, amazing. Like the way that they support and uplift us, and they're always shouting out, hey guys, we have stuff for you, we have resources, there's open calls, we want to see what you have, put it out there. I've never had that type of energy come from such a strong community. So doing these test talks, it's incredible watching people be interviewed, and you get to know them even more deeply and intimately. That is a layer and a gift of this whole thing that is amazing. People collect art all the time, but how often are you in a space where you can talk and be like, what was your mindset when you made this brushstroke? You can get to do that here. It's so exciting. And the Tezos artists for me, honestly, have been the biggest and most cushy. They're so giving. Yes, they are very critical. So I really like the Amirs and whatnot, and the Lawrences and different things. I love the Pams, the very art critical people who've been doing art and do art galleries and things. I love that side, and I love blending over to the other side of it where people are like, I'm not, and I don't call myself an artist, but this is what I do. And I'm like, everyone's an artist. What type are you though? What are you doing? Like, whether or not you are doing the coding side of it, developers,
Mhm.
Artists that I'm like, may I pick your mind? I just need 2 lines
Mhm.
of code and I guarantee I can make this work. I guarantee. It's just, it's phenomenal seeing everyone just really lean into, this is what I am great in. And NFTs allow us to be able to do that all together. Like being around from when Hen was around and we were all like, okay, oh, all right. And then the death of Hen, that was a telling moment. Seeing
Mhm.
how the community was like, yep, okay, we're going to come together and we're going to figure this out. Where do we go? What do we do? Oh, this is where our work actually lives. Oh, let's learn smart contracts more. Let's learn how to break it apart, understand IPFS, things of that
Right,
nature. And then we're going to have massive spaces and share that knowledge. That
right.
was that was key. I was like, yes, this is amazing. You share the knowledge that you're gaining and then get more knowledge along the way. There wasn't any, I'm going to just guide and hold this to myself because that will be more profitable. And we understood that it's together we get it and we can gain more profitable things together. So yeah, it was that was yeah, Tez is amazing.
I think I think you struck on a couple of things that I'd like to touch upon. One, obviously, as we mentioned, like the richness of the community, and also how you can shorten the distance between the artist and the collector, in that you're able to directly engage with artists that you collect, you love, and you can get to know them on even a personal level, whether it's via means like TezTalks or whether you're hitting them up on a Discord or a Telegram chat. Um, but what you said that really struck me was something that we've stumbled across multiple times over the course of interviewing artists within the Tezos ecosystem, is this reluctance to identify and call oneself an artist. And like the sense that everyone is looking for that moment where they can really embody that identity with full confidence and full acceptance, I think has been a challenge for a lot of people, particularly because, the first wave of NFT art that was being minted was received by people saying this isn't art or this doesn't count as art because it wasn't presented in a conventional format. And so it's beautiful to sort of see this community come together and people basically legitimize one another's work, because when you are having some of the most talented artists minting their work for, cents over dollars, you just think, how can this be the case? Like, how can a price have such a discounting effect on the quality of the art that's actually being created? And we've had artists of every caliber, those that have just started out in this space and those that are, being presented by the Whitney or the MoMA. And so it's saying there's, I like this idea of like reinforcing or fostering everyone's confidence to call themselves an artist. Like, how do you find that ecosystem? Like, do you find that everyone's very supportive of your work in the same way that you are of theirs? Or is it kind of the process where you need to determine that for yourself and move with the energy that you've provided for yourself?
The second one. It definitely, I move where my energies are most received, but I understand that the things that I'm creating, people are going to come to in time. I understand
Mhm.
that right now, I, as new as the technology is, I've been waiting for this type of atmosphere and environment for a very long time. And so for the people who are like, wait, you left a canvas for this? I do paint pours, dirty paint pours. So I'm like splattering paint everywhere. Like I make a mess of things. I do traditional drawings and things of that nature, but I have never been I am the professional. I've done this type of, I'm in the gallery type of sense in the
Mhm.
formal way. Never in that sense. But I understand this is just the beginning. And I understand that the art that we experience in the physical, we are now going to be experiencing in ways that people might not have imagined, but I have. So for me, I know that I can ruffle feathers in the traditional art sense. They are like, what is going on? But I'm like, watch how I can pull apart every aspect, every layer, so that someone can walk through the layers of your art, and you will experience it in a way that you've never experienced it before. When your art is bigger than any building that you can imagine, anything that is life size, we can build on the world. The world is our canvas. That's always been my thing. And I'm like, oh, yes. And now the technology is allowing people to see and experience those things. And
Mhm.
that's what I'm excited about. So definitely, I have noticed that there's all of the different flows of things, but I go around and I let people know, hey, by the way, your art, it's in AR form. So when
Mhm.
I did the gallery opening with Toko, she was so wonderful to allow me to do the AR collaboration with her. And we took traditional art and digital artists, and we created a realm where now, yes, it lived there and it was premiered there, but literally it can be experienced anywhere in the world, and people can bring them into your actual room right now. Those things, and people are still realizing that. They're like, yo, that's wild. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you're gonna come to it. So it's a matter of when they do, not
Mhm.
necessarily that I'm concerned that they don't get it now, because it's a lot to wrap your mind around.
I think, especially when you're dabbling with mediums like AR and VR, you can give your work the scale that many wouldn't think to make their work. Like you can make it, like you said, so much bigger than a building or any room that would present, a canvas. And even just in that grandiosity, like it almost feels like there's a correlation between how big a piece of artwork is and its qualification as art, if you know what I mean, which is it's a bizarre concept to think of, because if you think about, the size of the Mona Lisa and it's tiny, but then when
Mhm.
it comes to digital art, it's almost like the bigger it is, the realer it is. And in terms of, dabbling with new technologies as ways of expressing your work, I actually listened to your Twitter space from a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned that you've dabbled with FX hash and generative art. You haven't released anything so far, or at least at that point in time. So is that an area or like a field that you're going down? Like, what are you experimenting with on there?
Yes. So my daughter, I love her. She's so amazing. She's an NFT artist also, and
Amazing.
she's into math and art. She has perfect blending of it. So when I was like, okay, we're coding together, you're using Unity, this is a thing. We're using MIT technology behind the scenes. It's all the same thing. Let's try and code together. So that's where my interest for, besides just the generative side and loving to code, like I used to build my websites from scratch. That was one of my assignments in school, like my senior college assignment. Build it in Dreamweaver. Like I'm a coder. I can read that. I've always been like, let me look at the developer tab and read the code and then see the visual. And that's how I
Mhm.
view it. So for us, it was one of those, we wanted to create the never ending clock. So we released a version of it, but we wanted to revamp some of the coding. So we took it down. But definitely something we're still pursuing. But it's going to be a clock that never ends, and it continues on and on and on. So one of
So
those.
I guess your first foray into generative art was more a means of bonding with your daughter and also fostering her talents within like the art and mathematics space. And as you mentioned earlier in the interview, it sounds like you come from a long line of, women in STEM who are particularly talented with numbers and visualization and data. And I think taking a skill set like that, which is not common, and channeling it into a creative field rather than, becoming data analysts and financial advisors and so on, is unique. And it makes it, I think it sets a good example for others that you don't have to take a technical skill set and keep it within a technical field, especially frankly when it comes to women in particular, because I think women in particular are often, or they don't often stay in those fields because they are male dominated, and often there is a lack of spaces where they feel welcome to stay and to foster their talents. So to say there's actually a diversity of fields that are coming out where these skill sets can be applied is a wonderful thing. And
Definitely.
Yeah, and
My
like
daughter loves it.
acting as a role model for them is very empowering. So I guess the next question I want to ask is, what's the sort of legacy you want to leave, and like, how do you want to use your work to not only encourage people from more technical backgrounds to pursue creative things, but also, once again, to keep a level of mindfulness and healing through their practices, rather than kind of getting caught up in the rush of this industry and trying to make money off their work, rather than trying to use it as a means of, I guess, meditation or calm or healing.
Definitely. So I would encourage everyone to think of this as your time capsule. So when you mint an NFT, it is forever. It is on the blockchain and people can experience it and find it and things of that way. So one of the things that I was doing was using it as a family tree, a family heirloom. So buying when you do things and you're working with over the reality or different AR, different geotagged metaverses and plots of land and things, you build on them. So I've built the family tree where my father likes to frequent and where my family is, so that we can put up pictures there. It can always be updated, but it lives there. And I've, of course, got my parents' wallets and I got my children wallets and my partner a wallet. And I was like, when you get to it, trust me, you'll understand and you'll thank me later, but y'all are going to be set up with this. So starting them off in the ways that I knew that they would accept it and see it. I've
Mhm.
always wanted to be a bridge to the technology and art side of things. So I was like, if I put this along a walking path and we stumble upon it, that is a talking point. So that got my father and my mother interested. Plus, then when I was like, yes, your granddaughter has NFTs, she's used her art and this and the third. And then when they were seeing the learning, the layers of learning, I'm like, well, she had to learn, and I made her read the smart contract. I made her understand at surface level what this all meant, this, that, and third.
Mhm.
They were like, wait a minute, this is not what we're hearing in the news. And I'm like, no, it's not. So definitely trying to be the illumination on the sides that people are not aware of, that isn't being highlighted. No, not everyone is having the biggest sales in the world, but for me it's not necessarily about that, because I understand we are creating a foundation and we want them to have strong roots.
Mhm.
So we're going to make these things happen.
So then what does it all mean for you, in terms of what do you hope to achieve out of all of this?
I really hope that I am able to, one, share with people that there's a way here for each and every one of them. This is the future now. Things are happening. So people are like, oh, well, this seems very, fifth world and the fifth element and,
Mhm.
outer space and tech, and it's all real. It's been in the works for a very long time. And now we are actually at the point where it's publicly being used. So for me, I'm like, use the technology in the ways that you find healing, that you find appealing, not just in the ways that they're saying it must be used. I want
Mhm.
people to think of them in different terms. I don't want people to come to the technology and think, okay, I have to do it in this way, otherwise I can't be in this. There's a way for everyone within NFTs, and navigating and encouraging people to find their way is the best thing, because when they find their pockets, when they find the places that they're strongest in, the whole thing strengthens.
Mhm.
So that's really my goal, is to use all of the healing, the art, and the technology, blend it together, talk about it, spread the knowledge of it, and say, this is what I've got, but what can you bring? What do
Mhm.
you have to bring to it? So that's my goal.
Yeah, I think, as you said, when you look at the way this sort of technology is covered in the press, you are not going to have an accurate representation of everything that's actually going on. Actually, my sister just the other day said people are still talking about NFTs. Like, that's still a thing. And I was like,
NFTs are
it
dead. I'm
looks
like, oh.
Exactly. Look, and the Rolling Stone article that said, "Oh, all NFTs are officially worthless." And when you listen to that rhetoric, it's quite damaging, particularly when you're sitting on the other side of the bank, the riverbank, and saying, "There is so much going on. Like, what authority did you have to call it dead, or like
Right,
what gave you the impression that it's dead?" And as you said, this is going to be a fairly ubiquitous technology, so there is greater risk in not participating than to just simply experiment with very little cost past mental effort. And so I think it's amazing that not only did you encourage your daughter to get involved, but also the generation before, i.e. your parents. And I think that's where a lot of people have neglected to involve others. They think, "Oh, you're too old, this is past your time." And that's also not helpful. Like, this is supposed to be an
right.
all-inclusive environment.
That
So
part. You wanna bring your whole family along. There's generations to families, like, from the
Mhm.
youngest to the oldest. My four-year-old is like, "Hey, mom, I think this would be cool. Build a world." Okay, that's spatial. My dad's like, "I don't understand." My dad and my mom are from the '40s. I will leave it at that. I still bring them in. I still am like, okay, we need to look at it the iPad. We need to look at it on the TV. Oh, look, we can look at it on the big screen monitor. Like, look at it on the building. We can do it all the ways. When you meet people where they're at, then they're comfortable having discussions because, yeah, my dad was like, no, it's just about money and da da da. And I'm like, actually, this is this is a whole nother side to it that you didn't even know. Let me show you.
I
So
mean, I think also, like, if even if you are born in the 40s, if you have Wi-Fi in your house, similar sort of concept. There was a technology that, like, we had the very, very basic understanding or principles of back then, but we didn't have it to the level that we have it today. And to say that, oh, past a certain age, this technology is not relevant to you is just unfair, I think.
right. And
So
nonsensical. It
yeah.
makes no sense. I'm like, I mean, it's here in the world, and if they are in the world, then guess what? I mean, I always say it's all alchemy. Energies
Mhm.
ebb and flow. So, yes, technology is here and it's all around us. What ways it develops is on us. So, I
Mhm.
say bring to it your best, your greatest. So, I'm like, I'm calling to everyone, bring me your best, bring me your creative side, show me what you got because then we find things that we never imagined. I
Mhm.
would have never come to loving AR in this form and fashion without certain people like Cyber Nerd Baby and Space Joe and Josh Garrett and things of that nature. I wouldn't have been like, yes, I can really show people this because I've been doing things, but I'm like, oh, no one cares for this. But when you're
Mm.
like, no, I'm in a space in a place where there's someone who's going to care about this, and this is going to advance where we are. That's the important part.
Yeah.
And people
It's
like creating the women in tech, like the amount of women who are doing phenomenal things, it's wild. Being able to host women in tech events like put on by legendary beauties and being a part of the Women in Tech Museum, seeing what they're creating, it's phenomenal. I'm like,
Mhm.
y'all are amazing. It's the y'all for me.
And I think also when we're dealing something like, the open internet, you can always rest assured that there's an audience for everything. So as you said before, it's about finding your tribe within the ecosystem. And once you do that, you have like a supportive network of people who either follow, collect, or just simply champion your work or champion your efforts to developing your work. And I think that's a sort of positive environment that does do a lot to combat the fact that there is a lot of negative in this space that we have to acknowledge and have to work our way around, because this technology is neutral, meaning the pendulum is going to swing both ways, and we kind of have to be prepared for both the best and the worst. um, but I do have one final question for you before I let you go, which is, with all of this exploration, and you have done, I know you said you started around the time of the pandemic, all the exploration and the experimentation that you've dabbled in throughout the course of interacting with the blockchain, what do you find yourself drawn to? Like, what do you feel excited to work on next?
XR. I'm I the immersive experience is It's everything. It's so phenomenal. So deciding if it's going to be a mixed reality experience or an augmented reality experience, or if it's just going to be virtual reality, it's just the puzzles are always there. And I'm an artist, and artists, we always are like, oh, what's going to keep our entertainment? There's no way that XR can ever get like, I'm like, I always have to learn something new, some new way, some form or fashion. So right now I am definitely tapping it back into JS and whatnot, doing things and trying to figure out the easiest way to, without other applications, bring people the 3D aspect and then pull them into the immersive experience. So definitely using more of the world as being the actual canvas and doing
Mm.
the cloud, the point cloud, and definitely geotagging things. I'm excited about that. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, it sounds like XR is sort of this accumulation or this aggregation of all of the technical mediums that you've experimented with so far. So I'm very excited to see what you come up with, and you're going to have to share it with us as soon as it's done, or even if it's still a work in progress. I think we'd love to know how the journey is going. Leah, thank you so much for your time. I think this was super enlightening. It was also a very, very refreshing chat to pull away from the technical and see how we can inject a bit of spirituality and healing into the Web3 space. I think that's wonderful. And I'm sure it won't be too long before we chat again soon.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been wonderful. Y'all are fabulous. And again, y'all are wonderful. Like I like to say before I leave any place, any space, love self, love others, and love often. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you.